All right. Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you to everyone who has come to join our Teach in New Zealand webinar. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes before we dive right into everything, just to make sure that everyone can get in. In the meantime, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Victoria. I'm a member of our Canadian team here. We've got a couple of our members of our New Zealand team here as well that'll be taking us through our webinar today, including Zaf, as we can see there. I'll be throwing it over to him shortly, but we just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining us. Zaf, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah.
I know we'll revisit it.
Thank you, Victoria. As mentioned, we've got a few of our team. The beauty of being a global operation is that we can have various team members kind of chip in from around the world. Just to reiterate what Victoria has just said, we'll give it another two minutes or so. We can see that there's still quite a lot of people that are still jumping into the lobby and entering the event. So just 1 or 2 more minutes. We ask that you bear with us. And then we're going to crack on and give you everything you need to know about teaching and living in New Zealand.
Perfect. In the meantime, I know we had targeted this as a Teach in New Zealand webinar for those in North America, but we know we've got some people from across the globe here tonight. If you can you jump in the chat and say where you're from and where in New Zealand you want to go if you know. If you've been before and have a most loved spot that you want to throw in for those educators who know they want New Zealand but have never made the journey over yet. I was telling Zaf earlier, I personally have only made it to the South Island, so the North Island is next on my list to make it over to. From Toronto,
Nice, we can
wonderful.
See those answers coming in.
Where in Canada are you at now? I imagine if it's quite different weather from the Philippines. California, wonderful. Alberta, Ontario, Florida. So we've got a good mix of the cold weather and the warm weather people across. North Carolina, very cool. Another Ontario, Manitoba. Oh, Charlotte, you brought up the Blue Jays. For our friends in New Zealand who might not be up to date with baseball, Major League Baseball, Toronto made it to the World Series and sadly lost in extra innings on Saturday, and the whole country was watching and rooting them on. So very, very sad loss for us, but very proud of our baseball team. From Ghana, from Nigeria, Alberta as well. Wonderful. New Brunswick. I think we've got pretty coast to coast here. Perfect. All right. It's 5:03. Thank you all. I'm going to jump into everything because I know everyone is busy. So we'll jump right in. For those who joined a little bit later, just to quickly reintroduce myself, my name is Victoria. I'm on our North American team here. I'm also based in Alberta, and I help connect educators between Australia, New Zealand, as well as the UK, and I'm kind of the initial first step in the process for international educators looking to go teach abroad. What we are going to go over today. So we're going to start with a quick welcome and an introduction to ANZ UK. We're going to talk about why New Zealand. My cheesy line for this is always why not. We know New Zealand is such a beautiful country with so much to offer, but we'll go into that a little bit. We will explore the different teaching opportunities that we have to offer. We'll also go over what you need to be able to teach in New Zealand. We're going to quickly jump into a few of the visa pathways and simplify that for you. We'll talk about how we at ANZ UK can support you every step of the way, as well as the timing of your move. Obviously, their school year is quite different to ours here in North America. We'll go over the next steps to start your journey, and then we will have some time for question and answer at the end. I will also be in the chat. Like I said, we also have some members of our team in New Zealand here manning the chat. So if you do have questions as we're going through, please feel free to put them in the chat and we are happy to answer those. If it's something really general, that would be good for everyone. I'll make sure to write it down so we can revisit it at the end. If it's something super specific and niche, I will be sure to connect with you after this call and we can go over those things one-to-one, but we'll try and keep everything general so that everyone can benefit from this. Oh, Shanice is wondering, can anyone else see the slides or not see the slides? Before we jump in, there is something being shared on the screen. Anyone else? Okay. Yes, Shanice, I would try and rejoin because it looks like it's working. Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone. Okay. On that note, Zaf, I will throw it over to you.
Whew. Starting with a bit of a heart attack there, thinking that our webinar might not be visible to everybody. But yeah, great to hear that it is. I guess keeping on the theme of baseball and helping everyone understand our role as the New Zealand team as part of ANZ UK. I guess if Victoria is the pitcher, that would make us the receivers of lovely teachers. I hope I've got my baseball terminology right. It was the best I could do. And then again, just to reiterate, my name is Zaf Burns. I work in the permanent recruitment team in our New Zealand branch, and collectively as a team, we cover the entire nation. And then again, we have a few more team members in the background that are just going to be answering the questions as they come in. Please do feel free to drop questions into the chat box as we go. Get them answered. So, welcome to ANZ UK Education. Before we actually crack on with a lot of the awesome content that we have, as is customary in New Zealand, we have something called an opening karakia. It's a bit of a cultural introduction, and it's very important to us down here in New Zealand. So yeah, everyone just bear with me while I go ahead and whack out this opening karakia. At the end, there will also be a closing karakia. Tuia I runga, tuia I raro, tuia I roto, tuia I waho, tuia te here tangata, ka rongo te po, ka rongo te ao, homie, huie, taikie. Now, for those of you, if you can pick up thinking, man, this guy's got a bit of a weird Kiwi accent. I am originally South African, and so can hand on heart from firsthand experience say New Zealand is amazing. It has been for me, and it has been for a lot of other migrants that have made their way across to New Zealand to teach and to live. Now, despite it looking like we have 3 years of people-centered recruitment, there was actually a glitch as we uploaded these slides, which we're just seeing now. We have 10 times that amount. We are geriatric when it comes to how long we have been around providing recruitment and support services for teachers. So we actually have 30 years of people-centered recruitment, and we've been around for a long time. So by working with ANZUK Education, you get to work with experienced consultants. The market changes, and having knowledgeable people that are actually working alongside you to help navigate some of these changes or barriers that you might experience is super useful. So that is our bread and butter. We love to help. Because we've been around for a while, we work very closely with many schools across New Zealand, and then we also have a select few schools that work with us almost exclusively. And so through working with ANZUK Education, you're actually able to gain access to exclusive teaching roles that you might not know about otherwise. We manage the full recruitment process. So from this very first conversation in a webinar through to meeting you at the pub when we host our teacher drinks after you've been in Wellington or Auckland for 3 months, we do the whole process from start to finish. Part and parcel of that would be the interview and CV preparation. So luckily, again, I haven't been around for a while. We've worked with New Zealand principals for a long time. And actually, we have a bit of a template that we like to use that is made in conjunction with New Zealand principals. So we were able to kind of get your information into exactly the format that we know New Zealand principals will be responsive to. And then post-placement support. So the job is not over once you sign the job offer on the dotted line. In fact, that's kind of actually where the fun begins, and even more support is required. So we provide the support from the start through to the recruitment process, help you with the interviews, get that job, and when you get the job, you're the main players here. We just support, but that support is pretty comprehensive from start to finish. And most importantly, won't cost you a thing. Now, why New Zealand? What I'm going to do is focus on just some of the, I guess, the key aspects in terms of the actual job search. So New Zealand has a globally recognized education system. We're pretty proud of it. It's ever changing. It adapts to the needs of the world. And ultimately, when it comes to, if I could sum up New Zealand's approach to education, it's doing their damnedest to not create automatons. We want critical thinking, we want creative, we want confident people that enter society and have an idea of what they're good at, what they can do, and are confident in being able to achieve. So the whole New Zealand system, education, as well as just the culture, is very much around rapport and instilling confidence. And as teachers, you could expect to have a fair amount of freedom and autonomy as to how you want to go about achieving your goals with your students. We offer short-term and long-term opportunities, so that might be a 6-month role if you're here for a good time, not a long time. But on the other end, we work with families, and we actually help get them placed to change their life and come and live in New Zealand. And that's obviously done through longer-term or permanent opportunities. Working with us, we can help identify what might be the best way to get what you want out of teaching in New Zealand. Financial support. So we have a few cool things that we will be touching on later that New Zealand does offer for teachers. It is just good to note that for this webinar, we don't want to get bogged down in the details. Ideally, a comprehensive conversation would be had with a consultant. For now, we're giving you the information that helps get you started and helps make a decision as to whether New Zealand is the right choice for you to come and teach and live. There's a great lifestyle in New Zealand, and I would say arguably that's the main drawing card for New Zealand is the lifestyle. We are a green country. We are surrounded by nature. We respect our nature. Concrete is our enemy. We love the water, from volcanoes to snow to everything that Earth and the world has to offer us. New Zealand just kind of seems to have it all, and we're proud of that. Part of New Zealand's culture is also a high respect for nature and an understanding that nobody actually owns nature. We're all borrowing from the earth, and we should give back as more than we actually take. And then lastly, some fantastic locations, which I'd like to touch on a bit later. But before I actually touch on the main locations that we're used to dealing with when it comes to securing teaching roles, I would like to tell you that New Zealand is actually the youngest country in the world. It was of all the existing countries, it was the last to be founded. As a result, it has been able to learn from a lot of the mistakes that other countries have made. So we didn't have to go through a lot of unsavory, terrible, unjust things as a nation. We certainly have. We have our own history. However, the country itself learned a lot from other countries and has been able to circumvent a lot of the other issues that can plague other countries. Now, a bit of Maori mythology to get you started. So the South Island, which is actually this one over here, this is actually the canoe that Maui was on before he pulled up a giant fish from the depths of the sea. That giant fish that he happened to pull up turned out to be the North Island. So in Maori mythology, it's pretty awesome. If you've seen Moana 400 times like I have, because I have 2 daughters, you'll get to know the history of Maui and a little bit of Maori and Polynesian mythology there. Focusing a bit more on the main areas that we do our work, it is Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch, but they can tend to be a bit of a split in terms of preference. So North Island tends to be a bit more metropolitan. It does have two large cities in Auckland, which is our largest city, and then Wellington, which is our capital city. 2/3 of New Zealand's population live on the North Island. So that does mean that more people, more schools tend to mean more job opportunities. It's generally a sunnier and more tropical environment on the North Island, but New Zealand truly is a 4 seasons in 1 day type country. So yeah, it could be tropical 1 minute, could be snowing the next. Touching on the South Island, it is beautiful. I cannot overstate how beautiful the South Island is. I haven't made it down there myself as much as I should have, but anybody who knows anything about Christchurch has probably heard about the South Island, has probably heard of Queenstown or the likes of Wanaka, which is essentially it's like a mini Europe in New Zealand. The communities in the South Island tend to be smaller and more spread out, but very, very close knit. The pace of life tends to be a touch slower, and it's less of a melting pot compared to the North Island. We as New Zealanders, we like to think that we do live in a multicultural society here in New Zealand. Probably not as multicultural as the likes of London or Paris or New York. However, we're still proud of our diversity and willingness to welcome migrants and make them part of the New Zealand whānau. Whānau means family. So that's a little bit about the various types of opportunities we can offer, why you might want to come to New Zealand, and a little bit of the information about the locations and the history. Looking at some of these awesome pictures, work and play, there's not many better countries for a work and play type lifestyle. Beautiful scenery, as I mentioned previously, and nowhere in New Zealand are you far from a body of water or a forest. Teachers tell us that the pace of life is a little bit slower, it's more relaxed, and many educators tend to find a better work-life balance than what they may previously have experienced. This picture over here, this is a Wellington cable car. It's an absolute feature. It's a short ride. It's about 7 minutes, but you know, we're pretty proud of it. We've got Hobbiton. I'm sure nobody comes to New Zealand not knowing about Lord of the Rings, not knowing about The Hobbit. There is a beautiful Hobbiton as an area is beautiful. They've got an active Green Dragon pub. So for those of you familiar with the film, you'll recognize the names. Just a few days or weeks ago, Elijah Wood, Frodo himself, nonetheless, popped in and actually was able to gate crash a wedding. So that would have been pretty cool for for those people getting married at Hobbiton and getting the chance to interact with Frodo. And then top left over here, guys, just a kind of a gnarly New Zealand beach. So our beaches do vary. However, New Zealand in style tends to be quite gnarly. It's rugged. It's you always find interesting rocky formations. As I mentioned, 4 seasons in 1 day. It's a gnarly place, and it is beautiful. Top right, this is just to highlight some of the adventure type tourism that New Zealand is known for. So specifically the South Island, you'll find some awesome outdoor attractions. This is the shot over boat, I believe, which is a boat that gets up to high speeds and does all cool sorts of tricks, and gives you a heart attack, but ultimately you're safe and you walk off having a good time. Touching on the teaching opportunities. So as an organization, ANZUK Education covers the entire sector and all of the options for teaching roles within that. So early childhood, so for our kids aged 0 to 5, that is the sector in which they fall. Primary schools, so our kids from the age of 5 to round about can be 11 to 13, depending on the school. Secondary schools generally aged 11 or 13 to 18. And then we also have a special education sector. When it comes to special education, sometimes this can be part of a mainstream school. Sometimes it can be its own satellite unit on the premises as a school. And then we also do have specialized special education needs schools, which are standalone and not connected to any mainstream education. The opportunities that we most commonly work on, so relief teaching, we call it relief teaching. It's called supply teaching. It's probably called substitute teaching in North America. Victoria can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, we offer supply teaching. We offer fixed term contracts. So that might be taking advantage of your working holiday visa and coming to New Zealand for just 1 year. It could be 6 months. It could be a bit of a mix and match between trying to do some relief teaching as well as picking up, potentially a job for a term or two and being able to have that stability in work and the chance to really ingrain yourself in New Zealand's curriculum. And then lastly is permanent. So our permanent opportunities, we've seen an increase in interest in permanent opportunities, and that's because some of the awesome changes that the New Zealand government has made, which has a beneficial impact on teachers, which again we will touch in some future slides. Now, meeting New Zealand's requirements is generally done over 4 steps. As I mentioned before, we're going to keep this pretty high level, so we don't want to get bogged down into too much detail, but this would be a critical conversation that you have with your assigned consultant should you go on to decide you're interested in coming across to New Zealand. Firstly, you get your qualifications assessed. Now, this is done with this is called an IQA, an International Qualification Assessment, and it's done with the New Zealand Qualification Authority. They are essentially responsible for looking at your teaching qualification and saying, yeah, this PGC looks pretty similar to a New Zealand PGC. Come on in and apply for teacher registration. Or alternatively, they could look at a qualification and go, interestingly, the way that you got your teacher registration in your home country is remarkably or substantially different to the way that the process works in New Zealand. So we would like to ask you a few more questions and give you the opportunity to provide more information and let us know why your teacher pathway is just as good as, or essentially explain that your pathway to teacher registration is similar enough to that of one in New Zealand. So once qualification assessment is done, you do get invited to apply for your teacher registration. At this point, they're really just concerned with the teaching experience that you already have under your belt. So they might look at, they basically just look at your classroom teaching experience and make sure that there's no giant red flags and that you are a competent and able classroom teacher. Once you get through step 1, the qualification assessment process, step 2 is generally fairly straightforward. If you get through step 1 easily, you're almost certainly going to get through step 2 easily. But again, direct conversations with a consultant can help you strategize, or not even strategize, just really give you the information that you need or the confidence that you need to approach this process. There's a bit of a activity that happens in here. That's when we go ahead and work with you to find a beautiful teaching job. But once that is done, we continue the work and we work on securing your visa. Now, again, because of the various visa types, you might already have a visa, working holiday visa. Potentially, you need the job to be able to then apply for the visa. We have an international support services team that actually supports with this. So in the beginning, you work with the likes of myself to find the role. Once that role has been secured, then you actually work with arguably the loveliest lady in the world, Annalise, who's gonna make sure that any outstanding processes get addressed swiftly so that you can enter the classroom and take up your teaching role at the appropriate time. Lastly is getting a salary assessment. So this is probably the biggest quirk of New Zealand. You get your quals assessed, you get your teacher registration, you get the job, you get the visa, and then you get your salary confirmed. There is a bit of a process and provision of documentation in order to complete this process. So again, just circling back to the benefit of our international support services team and working with ANZUK Education. I will also just kind of drop a caveat in here that as we are an experienced recruitment team, we can provide you an accurate enough estimate of what you might be earning to be able to plan your life admin, because you're probably thinking, if I don't know what I'm earning, how do I know where I'm living? Do I have to go for the Ferrari, or do I have to go for public transport? We're able to kind of help you make informed decisions relative to what your earnings or your salary might be. In New Zealand, all teachers are paid using the same salary scale. It is based on your qualifications, the level of your qualifications, which is determined at stage 1, and then also the years of teaching experience that is determined at step 4. Those two things come together to determine which step on the salary scale you sit, and thus your annual salary. Visa pathways. Now, this is a pretty content-heavy slide, admittedly, which is what we're trying to avoid. But these slides will, a recording as well as the slides, will be shared after the webinar has concluded. So this slide in particular you might find really useful for your own research or your own reading to make sense of what might be the most appropriate visa pathway for you to enter. Always have to take this opportunity to note that we are not authorized immigration advisors. So legally, we are not allowed to provide immigration advice. And with that being said, we have been doing this for many, many years and have built up a wealth of knowledge, so we can still support you in various other ways. So don't let that be a barrier to working with us. We'll still give you all the information that you need. But just to touch on the 4 main types of visa pathways: accredited employer work visa, otherwise just a standard work visa. You get the job, through the job you get the visa. Straight to residence visa, this has been a somewhat recent addition, and this is to address the fact that New Zealand does have a teacher shortage. Now, it is important to note that our teacher shortage, while it is across the board, doesn't mean that New Zealand schools are just open to every teacher from around the world. New Zealand does have, believe we have a high standard of education, and as such, New Zealand wants to employ the best teachers possible. Where they can't find suitable local New Zealand teachers, principals work with the likes of us to open the doors for really good overseas teachers. And that's what we specialize in. Recruitment's probably about 90% optics. So a lot of the time, we can get your information, we can get your situation, your experience into the right format to be very impressive to New Zealand schools. Now, I am going a bit off topic, but just going back to the straight to residence, it is a new-ish visa pathway that is introduced to allow our teachers from overseas to secure teaching jobs and actually enter New Zealand as with the status of resident. We also have the work to residence visa. This is a bit less common, but it does allow people that come in on a work visa to take that step up and apply for residency and stay long term. Then lastly, the working holiday visas. For those that are coming for a good time, not a long time, or potentially, what tends to be in a lot of cases, a good time turns into a long time. Working holiday visas are specifically awesome for allowing you to just enter New Zealand whenever you would like. You have the option to take up relief teaching, and working holiday visas kind of go hand in hand with relief teaching as well as fixed term contracts. However, they don't work the best with permanent contracts because, the nature of a working holiday visa is that you're here for a holiday with a little bit of work, whereas a permanent job obviously requires that you're here permanently working on a permanent basis. But that being said, working holiday visas, we have so many stories of young North Americans coming into New Zealand for a year and thinking it's going to be a year, but before you know it, it's 3 years later. They're residents, they've had kids, and then they're supporting the All Blacks, who happen to be New Zealand's rugby team. Again, work and play. It would not be a classic New Zealand webinar if we didn't show off our sheep. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that they actually outnumber us 7 to 1. If it's not 7 to 1, it's 3 to 1. Regardless, a lot of sheep. And you, on the back of that, delicious lamb and affordable lamb. So I was very pleasantly surprised to be able to, get to know about New Zealand's farming culture. New Zealand's farming is also very eco-friendly. So it is, as a nation, we are dedicated to the most kind of sustainable farming practices. And luckily, basically, the fact that we live on a nutrient-rich volcano makes it pretty easy to grow stuff. There we go. Thank you, Joe. 4.5 sheep to 1 person. So yeah, if you like sheep, come to New Zealand. I also never knew what merino was until I got to New Zealand, and nothing has kept me warm when it's cold and cool when it's warm like merino. So yeah, just another very small reason to come to New Zealand. Here, just showing off a little bit of New Zealand's natural geography. This is what you might expect to find across New Zealand. A stone's throw from almost anywhere in New Zealand, you can find awesome hiking trails. I know where I live in Wellington, it would take me all of 15 minutes to be in Rivendell. Now, again, referencing to Lord of the Rings again, Rivendell is the home of the elves. You might just be walking through some unknown New Zealand track and stumble upon an elven statue that was that was in a pivotal scene from Lord of the Rings. The remnants of those films and those sets are kind of scattered across New Zealand, and are available for all New Zealanders to engage with. And it's just pretty cool to come across awesome statues that you're not expecting. Bottom right here, looking at a bit of Auckland. So that's a bit more hustle, bit more bustle, lots of job opportunities. Auckland is your sunny, beachy type country, city, I should say. And then this is for sure the South Island. You can kind of instantly tell the South Island geography compared to the North Island geography, and that is almost certainly near the Remarkables. So getting down south and getting close to the Remarkables is an absolutely stunning experience. We regularly rank pretty high on surveys of livable countries in the world. And I think it was maybe a year or 2 ago, there was an HSBC expat survey, which saw that 9 out of 10 people that actually migrated to New Zealand had recommended it to other people because of its quality of life. So how we support you at every step of the way. So as I mentioned before, there's kind of 2 parts. There's the pre-placement support. That's where you work with the likes of myself and the likes of Victoria and our other team members, getting to know you and your situation. And I'm going to add here that I think we do a pretty good job of getting to know you, and not just your situation, but your family situation. So yeah, could be coming here for 1 year, looking to have lots of long weekends and take the most out of New Zealand that you possibly can. Chuck in a few hangovers, a few good travel experiences. Fantastic, what a time. On the other hand, we also deal with our teachers that are bringing over families. And so that's a different move, and it requires a bit more consideration. So we ask questions like, hey, you as a teacher, sure, we can get you a job, but what is it that your husband does, or that your wife does? What line of work is your partner in? Tell me about your kids. How old are they? Are they school-going age? Are they daycare age? This helps us to, again, strategize the best entry for you to New Zealand. So what's going to be the best location based on your situation? Of course, taking into account your preferences, but it is a combination of your preference and our information and guidance that that can produce for you a highly strategic and well thought out plan in order to make sure you get that dream come true of coming across to New Zealand. We also provide the guidance on meeting New Zealand requirements. So teacher registration, qualification assessment, those sorts of things. Don't want to get bogged down in the details, but we are here, we are helpful, and we're always ready to have a chat and provide some guidance in some way. Presenting you to the job market, interview preparation, and job offer. So this is the core part of us as consultants. This is our bread and butter, and this is mainly how we can provide the best support for you. So we don't just see a job and send your CV across. You could do that yourself. The way that we add value is by taking advantage of global networks, taking advantage of strong relationships with New Zealand schools, historical relationships that we've had for decades. The fact that we offer relief teaching to fixed-term contracts to permanent allows us to really get our fingers into a few pies around New Zealand, and in return source good information, which in turn helps us to support you. Once the interview process, you've worked with us, you've got that interview, obviously smashed it, you got the job. That is where the post-placement support would then kick in. So there is a bit of a hype around getting offered a job and feeling really good, and then it is now we have to focus on the process. It involves a fair amount of paperwork. As mentioned, we do have an international support service person that does support you with every step of the way. Relocation advice. So coming across to New Zealand is it's a new culture. How do the phones work? How does the public transport work? If I'm not mistaken, in Canada, you have to pay for the use of water, hydro, I think, whereas I think in most parts of New Zealand, you don't pay for things like that. So yeah, the country does differ in certain ways, and we can just help provide that, yeah, essentially make sense of your life in North America, and help you kind of translate that to a conducive New Zealand lifestyle. And then lastly is just introduction to other international educators and ongoing post-arrival support. It was a mere hour ago that I was busy adding some of the teachers that we've recently supported to get teaching jobs in New Zealand, was adding them to an event list so that they can get the invite to say, hey, come on over to the pub. We want to get to know everybody, where you've come from, introduce you to your peers. And we've actually had a few strong friendships grow from our social events that we do set up as ANZUK Education. It's just a good way to get to rub shoulders with people that are in the same waka, that are in the same boat as you. Yeah, had to jump through the same hoops, might be having the same difficulties adjusting to the curriculum or the temperature or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's just really good to be able to rub shoulders with like-minded teachers. Yeah, in a pretty fun environment. So timing your move is critical. Now, as you can see from these little boxes here outlining our calendar year, outlining the New Zealand school year, we start in January with term 1, and we end in December with term 4. So, I mean, we think that's pretty easy. Start in January, end in December. Quite simply, we follow the calendar year. It's good to note that New Zealand doesn't actually have set resignation dates. So jobs are continuously advertised throughout the year. We do have peak times of recruitment where there's better times of the year to look to come into New Zealand based on when in the school year it is. However, if you are a teacher and you want to resign in New Zealand, you lodge your resignation and you move ahead, you move on to the next school or whatever the opportunity is. That then creates a role in a school, which they then advertise to hopefully be filled either by a local teacher or somebody from overseas. So all of this is to say that while we do have main recruitment seasons, term 4 being our biggest, so between October and December is when most of our recruitment happens, because this is in preparation to get the best overseas teachers to be able to start for term 1, which starts at the end of Jan or the middle of April. Talking about the length of terms and kind of just the flow of terms throughout the year. It's generally a 10-week term followed by a 2-week holiday. So we would go a 10-week term, 2-week holiday, 10-week term, 2-week holiday, 10-week term, 2-week holiday. And then once it gets to term 4, that term might be about maybe 1 week shorter. So it'll be 9 or 10 weeks. And then you have a 6 to 7 week holiday over summer. So our longest holiday happens over Christmas and over summer. Don't know if any of you have ever had a sunny and hot Christmas, but that's the only thing we really know in New Zealand. Surprisingly, in my head, I still think of Christmas as a snowy, almost North American type vibe, probably because of Hollywood and the film industry. But yeah, no, down in New Zealand, you are having Christmas on the beach. you are barbecuing outside. The presents consist of water guns and beach towels and drink bottles and those sorts of. The drink bottle would be a terrible Christmas gift. Please, if any of you ever have a drink bottle as a Christmas gift, take it off the list. But yeah, it's a different type of Christmas, and I can't wait for you to experience it. Also good to know about the times of the year is to allow your travel. If you want to come to New Zealand, do some traveling before you take up a teaching position, it would be good to know, when to do your travel so that you're not traveling in the middle of a peak recruitment season and not making yourself available to secure jobs. Once again, direct conversation with a consultant will give you all the information that you need. And you'll walk away confident that you have the information it takes to make an informed decision. So just looking at some next steps, what we're going to do is, if you are interested, and actually, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to hand back over to Victoria, because she's going to handle the more logisticy side of things. And I will also just say thank you to the team for answering the questions, and thank you to all of you so far for dropping the questions into the chat box as we go. Over to you, Victoria. Perfect.
I was thinking that whole time, wondering if I should just go back to teaching and move to New Zealand myself. So if I decide to do that,
Yes.
I will be sure to let you all know. But for now, I am here to help you all make that transition. You will be getting an email from me likely tomorrow with the webinar recording, with the slides. You can revisit this. But if you are ready to get started, whether you just have a few more questions or you have already done your NZQA and you are ready to get into the process, please send me an email. You can make the subject "Tell me more." I would love if you can send across your CV, your resume with that, any information about you, where you're currently living, where you want to live, what stage you're at in the process, just so that I can be sending you to the best possible people. The other big thing is, if you do not see an email from me tomorrow, please check your junk. I know that sadly my emails often get lost in the junk or promotions folder, so I promise you I will be contacting all of you. If you do not see it, please reach out. My email is here, victoria.b@ANZUK Education, and you can email me with the subject line "Tell me more," so that I know that you are interested. I will pass it back to Zaf quickly. I know we've got some questions coming in. He'll do a quick closing, and then we can jump into these final questions.
Excellent. Before we jump into the questions, as mentioned, I would just like to do our closing karakia, very important to us in New Zealand. So, ka whakaeria te tapu, kia waitia ai te ara, kia turuku, whakataha ai, kia turuku, whakataha ai, hui e, taiki e. And now, time for questions. I know that they'll be piling into the chat. We'll answer them as we go. And thank you so much for all of your time. Do stick around to ask those questions, and stick around to get those answers.
Perfect. I can see we had some questions here. Mia asking about the best time to apply for a working holiday visa. Immigration, like Kirsten said, takes about 2 weeks. We typically recommend going a bit earlier than that, so you're not stuck waiting. But again, these are conversations that we can have depending on what time you're looking to arrive, going into those. I also just saw a question about publicly funded schools or private schools, and is there a major difference? Zaf, I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yes, I can. In terms of the difference between independent or a private or independent school compared to a public school or a state school, in terms of the actual teaching that you do, you're not going to find too much of a difference. However, there are specific benefits for working at a state school. Most notably, and this is something that I realized I should have mentioned earlier, would be the overseas teacher relocation grant. So there is the potential for you to be reimbursed up to 10,000 New Zealand dollars for taking up a teaching job of 12 months or longer, so which tends to either be a full year fixed term contract or a permanent job. You take up one of those types of jobs at a state school, you're potentially eligible for an up to $10,000 New Zealand dollar reimbursement. That is a reimbursement, so of course, you need to produce receipts and evidence of expenses, but we do have a system for that. So again, just to kind of to circle back in terms of the difference between independent schools, state schools, not too much of a difference. However, there are benefits to working in New Zealand's state system.
I just saw another one from Stephanie about interested in starting for term 1 and when should we be applying if you already hold NZQA. If you're looking for 2026, so this upcoming school year, definitely now. I'm sure, as Zaf said, term 4 is the busiest time for recruitment. So absolutely now, if you're looking for 2027, gives us a bit more time. It's never too early to express your interest and let us know what your thoughts are. As Zaf said, we can help with CV preparation, interview preparation, and all of those things that you can do over time. But if you are looking for 2026, send it in as soon as you can. Courtney, you can't bring children over on a working holiday visa. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but that visa is just for you. You'd need to look at some of the other work permits for bringing over families. Maria, that's a great question. How much are you going to pay ANZUK? We're a totally free service, so you pay us nothing. So we are here to support you along the way. There are costs, of course, associated with visas or with getting your teaching license, but there is no fee to use ANZUK. I saw Kirsten also answered. You can apply for primary and special education depending on your experience. Any other questions that we missed? Age restrictions are going to change depending on the visas. Again, the immigration website is going to be the best page for that, to go look at that. The working holiday visa has different age restrictions depending on what country you're coming from, as well as some of the accredited work visas and the straight to residence visas. Are there employment benefits included for state and private schools? Naf, do you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So New Zealand as I get it might work similar in Canada. We have essentially free healthcare that does not cover dental. I use the term free loosely because it's either free or heavily subsidized, leaning more to the heavily subsidized side. This would also be a good conversation to have directly with your consultant, because there's different requirements or different criteria based on the country that you are coming from and what that might mean for your insurance. So again, this is probably something best had as an individual conversation with your consultant. But for the most part, if you're able to secure a teaching job in New Zealand, you should be supported by New Zealand's universal healthcare system.
I have seen a couple more comments. Again, if you, like Zaf just mentioned, some of these are better to just have a one-on-one discussion. The cost of the visa application is going to depend greatly on what visa you're going for, how many applicants are coming. So that's something, again, I would say go to the Immigration New Zealand website to look in to the different visa options. Maria, I know you asked about, can you help look for an accredited employer? Absolutely, we work with employers who have accreditation for those looking to come over on the accredited employer work visa. Have I missed any others? Ben, at what of these stages? So typically, what we'd recommend is getting your IQA process to ensure that you can work as a teacher in New Zealand is going to be the most important step. If your visa is tied to a job offer, then you would have your job offer before you get the visa. If you are getting something like a working holiday visa where you might be doing relief teaching, then you could get the visa before having a job offer, but the job offer would be from ANZ UK. You'd be working for us as a relief teacher at the different schools that we support. Lisa, to answer your question, how do I know if I can afford to live there? As Zaf mentioned, if you want to talk to the consultants directly, they can give you an idea. You can also find information about the New Zealand salary scale online and kind of get an idea of where you might fall based on your education, qualifications, and years of experience. But the New Zealand consultants, they are going to be your best bet for finding out some more information. Is it permissible to be in the country as a visitor and to interview for employment? I'm not 100% sure on that. Zaf, do you know? Can someone come in and like on vacation and interview while they're there?
This is strictly a conversation that needs to be had directly with a consultant. This goes, it starts to wade into the visa side of things, which legally we're not allowed to provide advice on. So yeah, direct conversation with a consultant for sure. And in fact, that goes for any questions that are somewhat related to a visa, or any visa related questions. Those are almost all going to be conversations best had with your consultant directly, so that they can give you the correct information, without getting ourselves into trouble, of course. I did see a question up here earlier that I would like to answer publicly. So from Stephanie, Stefan, do you know whether most teachers overseas are able to get hired with a recruitment agency like us or on their own? It is a mixed bag. There are there's two parts to it. There is your suitability as a teacher, and a lot of that actually has to do with your subject. So we, like every country around the world, we have certain subjects where we have a greater demand or a greater need. So if you teach in a subject that happens to be in greater demand, your chances of securing a role increase. A lot of New Zealand schools are not familiar with the process for bringing teachers in from overseas, and where they lack the confidence, they're going to lack the drive or the openness to consider overseas teachers. Now, that's specifically where we as a recruitment agency can come in, as we bring our experience of bringing teachers in from overseas. We can put their mind at ease. And when I mentioned earlier that we have an international support service person that would help you with your case, they also help your school. So it is a two-pronged approach. We help you as the teacher, and we also help your school to make sure that they are doing everything they need to do to ensure that your situation is continues to progress, and that you ultimately make it here to New Zealand. So it's a mixed bag. We have teachers that come in on a Monday and they're interviewing on Tuesday. It just so happens that they are available at the time there is a school that has that specific need. Alternatively, some teachers I've dealt with for 2-3 years while we slowly work together to try and find the best opportunity for them and their family. So the timeline and your ability to get employed, there's so many factors. And because there are so many factors, it makes sense to actually kind of collaborate, I think, with an agency like us who knows what we're doing, we know the market, and can help you adjust accordingly to achieve the goals that you want.
Zaf, I know we of course want to talk to all the teachers. We're interested to hear from everyone, but we did have a great question here from Charlotte asking, is there any specific areas that have greater demands, whether that be core subjects? I know Kirsten also just commented here that Auckland and Wellington are really huge. Any attributes of a teacher that you've seen have great success? Anything that really puts our teachers in a great position for getting hired in New Zealand?
Yes, that's a very good question. What I'll do is, because I focus on the secondary sector, high school, I'll answer that from my perspective, and then perhaps Kirsten could provide her answer from a primary perspective. So Auckland does have the most opportunities. 1/3 of New Zealand's population live in the Auckland region, which just means there's more schools, which creates more opportunities. Not everybody wants to work and live in the big city with that hustle and bustle. So that's a reason in itself why people explore opportunities elsewhere. But Auckland would be where you find the most opportunities purely because there's the most schools. What makes a teacher employable in the secondary sector, or I'll start with the niche attributes. So that would be additional curriculum experience. New Zealand does not train teachers that have Cambridge or IB experience. These are not offered in New Zealand, but we do have schools that offer NCEA, which is New Zealand's curriculum, alongside Cambridge and IB. So where we have teachers that have Cambridge IGCSE experience, that is specifically useful for certain schools in New Zealand. And then again, the ability to teach to senior level is critical in New Zealand, just because the way that classes are distributed, you might be teaching from year 9 up to year 13, covering all ages. Beyond that, again, the specific requirements or what makes a good teacher, it does differ from when you compare it from role to role. But senior teaching experience, additional experience with additional curriculum. And then in terms of the style of teaching, we are very much lead from behind, guide on the side. We are not the lecture style teaching where you're standing up at the front, desks in a row. That's not our style. We are, we prefer a bit more of kind of an inquiry-based approach. And not only New Zealand's education system, but New Zealand's culture is very rapport-based. So teachers that can, that obviously have great English, and can communicate really well, who are creative, who are confident, and who bring themselves to the job and aren't afraid to be themselves. I believe those are the things that can make a teacher stand out, because New Zealand principals are looking just for a good person, a good teacher, sure, but a good person also. So being yourself, additional curriculum experience, and senior teaching experience. Kirsten, did you have any specific traits relative to the primary sector?
Yeah, I just added in the comments there that in primary, we teach all subjects. So I know in some North American areas, they are subject specific, but we teach all subjects here. And at the moment, there's a huge focus on structured literacy and structured maths experience. So with structured literacy, that is everything to do with phonics, spelling, and grammar, that sort of thing. So any sort of phonics programs and things like that. A big one that we have is BSLA at the moment. And then with maths, structured maths, so a lot of that direct and explicit approaches to teaching maths, Oxford Maths. I'm just trying to think of some other ones. So just bringing in some of those maths curriculums or schemes or programs is quite big in New Zealand at the moment.
Okay, being mindful that we have gone a bit over our time and it is almost 8 p.m. for those out in Ontario and even later for those in the East Coast. I'm going to cut it off there. If you do have more specific questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer those questions, set up a call, or direct you to the correct consultant. Once again, a massive thank you to Zaf, Kirsten, and Joe for being here and guiding us through this tonight. And thank you all for coming and spending your evenings with us. Hopefully this was informative. Like I said, you'll get an email from me tomorrow. Please keep your eye out for that. My email as well is victoria.b@anzuk.education. If you are eager to go and want to send me your CV tonight, please feel free to send that along, and I will be sure to get back to you soon. And again, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, day, morning, wherever in the world you are.
Ka kite, and thank you.